This is CBS News Miami.
Now at 6, we begin with an exclusive surrounding the Hope, Florida investigation. As we first reported at 5, CBS News Miami has obtained a copy of the secret grand jury report into taxpayer money funneled to the Hope, Florida Foundation. The grand jury found the DeSantis administration misappropriated $10 million to the foundation, money that ultimately ended up being used in a political campaign. CBS News Miami's Jim DeFeeti has that report. And Jim, it is highly critical of former Attorney General Ashley Moody and her office for allowing this to happen.
That's right. This report outlines how the DeSantis administration engineered what the grand jury called a sophisticated scheme to fund political activities. And the grand jury argued that it was allowed to happen because Moody and her office failed to protect taxpayers.
For months, CBS Miami has been trying to speak to Senator Ashley Moody about her role in the Hope, Florida scandal. Her office and her campaign have not responded to detailed questions about Hope, Florida. And last week, during what was supposed to be a press conference, Moody fled without taking any questions.
Senator, would you answer a few questions, Senator? Senator, could you answer a few questions from the press, Senator?
In February, however, Moody would have been given a copy of the grand jury report, which offered a stinging rebuke of her as well as her former Chief Deputy Attorney General, John Gard. The report claims Gard approved the settlement without conducting his due diligence to ensure the proper appropriation of taxpayer funds. This all started after Florida officials learned the healthcare giant Centene had been overbilling the state for prescription drugs under the Florida Healthy Kids program. Florida wasn't the only state affected. At least 20 other states were overbilled nearly $1 billion. Florida's share was calculated to be $67 million. Centene was prepared to refund $67 million to Florida taxpayers. But in September of 2024, someone in the DeSantis administration came up with the idea of diverting $10 million of the settlement to the Hope, Florida Foundation. Centene found the request unusual and inserted language in the settlement agreement that they were being directed by the Florida Attorney General to make that payment. Gard acknowledged to the grand jury he had reservations about the settlement agreement and that he esoterically agrees that the $10 million belonged to the state of Florida. Gard also explained to jurors that Florida statutes require the legislature to decide how money is spent, according to the grand jury report. Gard was also concerned about the political consequences if the legislature ever found out about the diversion. Gard did have political concerns about the dedication of $10 million to Hope, Florida, which he raised with AG Moody, because he knew the deal would be viewed by the legislature as a constraint on their spending authority. Gard insisted the settlement be rewritten so that instead of the Attorney General directing Centene to send $10 million to Hope, Florida, it would now state that the DeSantis administration's Agency for Healthcare Administration, AHCA, was directing Centene to send $10 million to Hope, Florida. His political concerns were resolved by the change of the agreement, making the settlement AHCA's agreement rather than the AG's settlement agreement, as the problem would now be AHCA's problem rather than the AG's problem. After consulting AG Moody, she authorized Mr. Gard to sign the settlement agreement in its final form.
Now, 4 months after Moody and her team signed off on the diversion to the Hope, Florida Foundation, Ron DeSantis appointed her to the United States Senate. And in January, DeSantis appointed Gard to be a judge on the state's 2nd District Court of Appeals, making him one of the most powerful judges in the state. Now, this afternoon, Gard sent CBS Miami a statement saying there was nothing unusual about the Hope, Florida settlement, and it was, quote, handled in the ordinary course by the department.
Jim, do we know if Moody or Gard were aware that the $10 million of taxpayer money was ultimately going to end up in a political action committee and the Republican Party of Florida?
We don't, and that's one of the questions I've been wanting to ask Moody specifically. What did she know and when did she know it? But we did receive a statement from Gard, and he said he only learned that the $10 million was funneled into the political campaign against the marijuana amendment after the election.
Way to keep digging on this story. Jim DeFeeti, thank you. And you can go to cbsmiami.com to read the grand jury report as well as Jim's story on the findings. And you can see more on the Hope Florida investigation on Sunday at 8:30 on Facing South Florida.